Good to be across from you. What's up, man?
Did you change shirts?
I did. You know, well, you guys, if you have seen any of the videos, which I know they're coming, I've found out some ways to cut down on the production time and upload time and all that kind of stuff. They're coming. But the reason sometimes we'll do, most time we do 2 shows in a day. So we'll record twice. And a lot of times when I'm going back and downloading from the cloud and all that kind of stuff, I need reference points. And so what I've started to do is make notes on what shirt I'm wearing for what episode. And it helps speed along the process.
I did not know that. That's
Pro
funny.
tip for you guys out there in podcast land: if you guys are recording more than 1 episode a day, and you don't care, or you do care, whatever, but it's one of those things where I can make a little note that says, "Hey, episode 136, green shirt," and
That's
I know,
funny.
very quickly. It's just little things like that make my life easier, and I'm all about hacking things to make life a little more simple.
It's funny. I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and the guy at the beginning snaps his fingers.
Yeah.
And he explains that that's to sync video
Yeah.
early on, and it helps him like with the snapping happens at an exact moment instead of the words coming out of the mouth, so you can know when to.
Yeah, I've got the syncing down, which is really pretty simple. I have to do, and you guys may wonder also, the little behind the snes, because we didn't plan on starting the show this way, but the little behind.
Do we ever do everything that's planned?
Yeah, we do. We try, but one of the things behind the scenes, in terms of putting this kind of stuff together, you guys may see that a lot of our intros are cut out. That's because obviously we don't want to be infringed on YouTube or get charged with infringing anybody's copyright material and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of just find a nice warm place in our beginning that doesn't have the music and all that fun stuff, and just kind of kick off from there. And I think it adds, like you're picking up mid-conversation a little bit. Kind of adds like a little mystery, coming in on a laugh or something. I don't know. Just the little things that I do for production quality that I think kind of hit the spot.
So yeah, so we've got a few things to talk about today. You want to start talking about a subject that I do not know much about, which is the story of Jeffrey Younger and his custody battle and conservatorship battle about who gets to decide what happens with his son.
So this is a weird case, man. I read this. You guys may remember we kind of thought we were going to talk about this in the last episode. We did not get to it because we were pretty long on Snowden. But this case out in Texas, there's a case where a mother and father who have split are fighting over one of their sons, not the other. Apparently, I don't know. You don't know much about the other, but they're twin boys. Both born male. And if you haven't heard about this, you really should. What's happening out there is the mother wants to transition her son from male to female. Father's not really down with this, and he's been fighting this in a court of law. And it sounds to me like the guy has just gotten kind of railroaded. The judge earlier on in the week had, quote unquote, ruled, I hate that word, had opined that the dad would not have custody. And then this week, later in the week, October 24th. So this is last week for you guys. The judge presiding over the case of Jeffrey Younger, the father who is trying to protect his 7-year-old son James from chemical castration via a gender transition, ruled today that the parents will have joint conservatorship over James, which includes making joint medical decisions for the child. This is a big deal, man, because this is kind of, like last thing justices want is to be overturned. Or for a decision to be overturned, or for those guys to have to go back. But this has raised such a calamity out there in social media and across the United States, and I imagine it's probably seeped its way out into the international community as well, that people are really, really pissed about this.
What are the main voices out there?
Well,
like the sides and factions?
You've obviously got people who support the quote unquote the rights of the child and a parent to trans their child, to make the transition from male to female or female to male at that age. And then you have people saying you're ludicrous. What the hell are you talking about?
Does anybody have an opinion on? So the first thing, like, I know there's a lot to dive in there, right? That you can talk about the whole trans and when a parent gets to decide for their children, and when the child has his own, like you said, rights, and when he gets to decide on them and so forth. But the first thing was that I kind of focused on is, okay, the court said that there's joint custody. Like, so having divorced parents is not like the greatest thing, right? But when you're married, you kind of have joint custody, right? You're two people married. You can still disagree within a marriage. I'm pretty sure, right, Shane?
Yeah, you're just smart to pick your battles, but coming from a wise man here, pick your battles. But yeah, you can obviously disagree.
Divorce happens sometimes, though. But it would seem like the logical thing of if you both had joint, which hopefully you agree most of the time, custody of your child at that point, or joint control, conservatorship, which is an interesting word.
That's the first time I'd heard that.
That even when you're divorced, that would be the same thing. Maybe the custody is different. The child lives one place or another, but it doesn't stop being your child at that point.
Right.
So unless there's some extenuating circumstance that I would not know about, that would be my default. Yeah, the child is still, at least in our framework, I know there's some people that think that children should have more rights or less rights, but for now, the system we live in is where the parents are kind of the trustees of the child. Like, they're supposed to take actions that are in the child's best interest. That means, though, that it's biased and they kind of get to push things or lean on the child in a certain way. Like, you should do this, you should do that, and so forth. Until it's usually 18, you can get emancipated before. I think you can get emancipated starting 14, maybe.
Oh, that's pretty early. I mean, for both parents, or
I've heard there's people who've been emancipated at 15, but for some reason 15 doesn't seem like the right break.
Yeah.
But I know that there are children who have been emancipated from both parents at 15.
Yeah, and I think that's. I mean, I think as a young adult, if it's just such a awful situation you're in, that you should have the right to say, hey, listen, this isn't the best thing for me. It doesn't and I don't think that it's the state's place, obviously, to step in here. I think it's probably more or less an understanding between the parents. Maybe a local sheriff to make sure that if nobody's using force against anybody, and really to maybe come to a place, but that's kind of a different situation.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is just that seems like the default, unless I don't know, one of the parents is in jail for murdering a bunch of people or something or is in an insane asylum,
clear and present danger type stuff.
Yeah, it seems like you'd still have joint conservatorship, which I'm sure is more complicated when there's a divorce, but does that mean that basic thing that I think a lot of people would agree on should change? I don't know. Do people have an opinion on that, or are they just focusing on the pro-trans, anti-trans stuff?
It's mostly the trans debate here, and let me read a bit of this article to kind of bring some people who may not be up to speed. The details of this. I think they help paint a picture, and then the extrapolation from this. I mean, Banks, I know we only got about an hour and a half here, so we'll try to get to everything. But this is from LifeSiteNews.com. Judge Kim Cook of the 255th District also put a gag order on both parents. Obviously, this is a violation of your First Amendment, but on both parents so that they cannot speak to the press about the case, and decided that the father is not required to pay attorney fees. The judge's decision means that the Save James website will have to be shut down. God, it sounds so authoritarian. Mr. Younger and his ex-wife, Dr. Ann Georgoulis, were in court last week fighting over custody and decision-making abilities for James and his twin, Jude. And the doctor, the mom, wants to continue the transition James into a girl called Luna. Mr. Younger wanted to take a wait-and-see approach rather than start the child down puberty blockers. 11 out of 12 jurors decided on Monday that Mr. Younger should not be granted sole managing conservatorship of his twin boys. Dr. Ann admitted in court that she is not actually the twins' biological mother and used in vitro fertilization via egg donor to gestate them. On Monday, a jury ruled 11-1 that the current joint managing conservatorship should be replaced by a sole managing conservatorship, that Mr. Younger should not be that person. So so
are they getting joint or not getting joint? I'm confused now.
This was the earlier decision by the jury. Okay. So they had since come back. I think it went back, and I'll read some more here. Judge Cook's ruling was originally scheduled for Wednesday afternoon, but was delayed when a seasoned when a seasoned civil court journalist from the Dallas Morning News asked the court clerk for the ruling schedule and provided her with a specific case number, she confirmed the day but refused to share the time of the ruling. Since kindergarten, Anne, the mother, has enrolled James in school as a girl under the name Luna. She began telling him he was a girl when he was just 3 and testified in court that she began to believe that when he liked a McDonald's toy meant for girls, James' pediatrician records also indicate that Anne, the mother, has met with Genetics. It's a medical transition clinic in Dallas that is considering hormone suppression when James is closer to 8 or 9 years old. Prior to this case, Dr. Ann had exclusive rights to make decisions regarding the psychology and psychiatric care for James and Jude. She needed to inform Mr. Younger of her decisions, but couldn't weigh in on the charge that the decisions from this company that does the transition wouldn't begin James on puberty blockers without Mr. Younger's consent. So anyway, it's gotten into a really messy custody battle down there. I look at this, man, and I am blown away that this is America. I mean, once again, you know, there are a few things that shock me. This is kind of a shocker out there. You know, once you go further into this case, Jeffrey Younger, he tells a story about how he and his wife also had a prenup, and it sounded like a pretty rock solid prenup that was not admissible in a court of law. I mean, we're talking about work history, we're talking about bank accounts, we're talking about anything and everything out there. That their marriage was annulled. After 5 years, was annulled, making their marriage illegitimate, also making their twin boys illegitimate. Is that not some of the craziest thing? I mean, for a court not to take into into consideration a prenup that is in the state of Texas, the lawyers have to explain everything in the prenup to you. You and your spouse both have to sign it. And you and your spouse's attorneys both have to sign it. It sounds like a pretty ironclad document.
It's like legal documents. What was the basis for not taking into consideration the prenup?
I haven't seen exactly why it is. I imagine because it's fairly damning in terms of the consideration for who the kids belong to. I mean,
well, I just wonder if it's on a technicality or something. I actually read the document. The annulment document. I've got it pulled up here, and I was going to comment on the fact that there are so many crazy things within like this story. Like both there's people on both sides who are like the mother is a crazy insane person, and people on the other side who say the father's a crazy insane person. And I hope there's people who seem to say, well, the whole thing seems to be crazy. But to me, that shouldn't affect what's happening, the basic things that are happening, and like whether a child is in joint custody and whether XYZ should happen.
Well, and the thing is, you know, I looked into this case. I could not find the mother on video anywhere. But I did find some clips of the father. And I think it's very interesting. This guy sounds pretty sane. And to me, I think what he says is very grounded. It is more, and I hate to say, this is more in line with what I believe, okay? And I'm not going to, obviously I'm saying it so it's my belief. But at the same time, just common sense applied here, and we'll get into this here in a minute, but I want you to hear from this guy, and I want you to hear, you know, it's not like he's some homophobe, okay? I want you to hear from his own story what he has done and what he has, I don't want to say sacrificed, but some of the decisions he's made in some extremely hard places that have affected his life negatively for standing up for the LGBTQ alphabet soup that's out there. And I don't mean to come off as crass or sarcastic or any of that towards people who might be in those communities, but there is something extremely wrong with what's going on, and I'm going to play that clip right now.
Matter of fact that it knew what I would do in the future, which is totally absurd, right? The other thing I would say is
You know what? I missed it, guys, and I apologize. I think it was maybe a minute early.
I mean, as far as I know, that's never happened in Texas before, right? We don't make children illegitimate. We don't do that in Texas, but this judge did that. The findings of fact, I've published them on the SaveJames.com site, and I've been very open about them because there's two interpretations of them. One is that they're very damaging to me, okay? And they probably will follow me for the rest of my life. But there's another interpretation. I think if you read the findings of fact, you'll find that they're ridiculous. And I think they're an indictment of the court, and that's why I put them out there. Let me give you one example. I believe it's finding 57. I'm not sure the number, but one of the findings says, this is a finding of fact from a judge in a court, okay? An official finding of fact. Keep this in mind. Here it is, quote, Jeffrey Damon Younger will do and say anything to get his own way, unquote. The court actually found, as a matter of fact, that it knew what I would do in the future, which is totally absurd, right? The other thing I would say...
So these guys, the court is suppressing part of what he has administered for the finding of fact, and then coming out and saying that the court knows what this guy is going to do with his kids.
In what context was the court making that determination? I am so confused.
So when all this is brought and said before the court and findings and everything else, this is number 57, which
it's not number 57 because I've got the document
do you have
here.
And he said it might be.
Yeah. That's not that's not the one. But it is. This list is.
It's extensive.
The weirdest thing to read ever.
It is.
It's in the context of, I guess, deciding whether the annulment is going to go through.
Sure.
Right? Because you're not granted annulment. Annulment is, I'm not an expert. I'm not a legal expert on this, but an annulment is different than a divorce, and they don't have to grant it to you. I thought annulments happened in a shorter time period than 5 years.
That's always been my understanding as well. For a prenup to have been signed and submitted and everything else, and for a court to grant an annulment to the mom, the wife here, and not have any ramifications per the prenup, it sounds odd to me.
But I guess it has to be this crazy for an annulment to happen 5 years into a marriage.
Yeah,
that's what you're trying to do. Like, say I assume I had no imaginable way to foresee this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very strange legal ground, right? I mean, this is a weird thing because when we talk about private property and volunteerism and contractual type agreements, like these type of things, contractual agreements, that's really all marriage really should be to begin with, right? I mean, it's not you and me and God and the state. And sometimes it's not even just you and them and God. Sometimes it's just you and them, right? And that's, you and them signed by a couple of attorneys as witnesses. That's a contract. For a judge to be able to overturn a contract that two people entered into of their own free volition and then had two witnesses of, legal understanding explained to them and then also sign, it doesn't sound, it sounds like this guy is getting the short end of the stick again.
Yeah. And I still don't think that any of this should necessarily have a bearing. Like, whether all these crazy things that I'm reading in this extensive list, it's like 122 facts, is real or not, because there's crazy stuff.
Sure.
And divorces can be crazy. Unfortunately, I have experience in that.
And crazy divorces, huh?
But it's not going to change the fact that the kids are theirs. Like, they can't change biology. That's funny that I'm saying that.
But here's the thing. I mean, I understand the question here is if she's, received in vitro fertilization, and he's obviously not the biological father, but has been the father figure in their life.
He's not the biological. I thought she wasn't the biological
mother. She delivered. He obviously didn't bear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So at any rate, I think that's probably her claim to this entire thing is, hey, listen, he's not, the biological father, so therefore...
But that's not how the contract works there.
I agree.
If you adopt a child or if you have in vitro fertilization, then you're the parents. That's how at least the legal system works. I'm not even saying it's perfect. There's lots of problems with it.
Unless there's a child clause in there for inverted, unless it basically says, hey, in the event that we ever cannot come to eye on anything, these are my kids, which I don't think this guy would have ever.
And there are actually quite a few cases these days, and it's not to make this controversial, but where lesbian couples and gay couples have specific mentions in their marriage contract about what happens with the kids, because, well, they can't have kids the way most people would have kids.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
About like, I'm the default person who gets the kids if we get a divorce, which I don't know. That seems like a horrible thing when you're getting married and in love and so forth to have to put into a contract.
But it's a contract.
It is.
I know it just kills all the romance, right?
No, I mean, you're married and I'm not, but like the idea of like a prenup, I don't know, like it seems icky.
Yeah, you know what? I think we've been led to believe that it's an icky thing. I think it's actually an extremely smart thing, honestly. I'm not saying, in my...
Well, no, but so here's the thing. If the icky thing is the government being involved in marriage, because if the government wasn't involved in marriage and you got married, God doesn't come down and be like, guess what? All your stuff is owned together now. Ha ha, have fun, like splitting it up.
Right.
Like if stuff was owned together at that point, there would be like a legal track of like, oh, they were married and then they have a joint bank account. That joint bank account like served to buy a car that's owned together. But if somebody owned a car before, that would be theirs. Like it seems like it would be easier for a logical person like myself to understand it without the government having made a whole set of rules that almost nobody knows. Like I don't know them. And again, I've been privy to divorce. I just know it makes things highly complicated.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. The fact that the state is involved with this at all is really weird to me.
It is.
It seems like
that's the icky part.
It seems like the lawyers who witnessed this, right? Who the law firms that were involved in helping sign this contract should be kind of the, I don't know, quote unquote, the deciding factor in terms of how this split goes. And hey, listen, you guys have both entered into this contract. This is my side. This is your side. Now these lawyers come together and say, hey, listen, maybe it's up to us here to adjudicate this and kind of follow through with this is yours, this is his, period.
Okay. So I know I've been like dragging the conversation in different directions, but if there's a place you wanted to go, don't let me take it away.
I want to get into this next piece where I was talking about where he goes into what he has done in the past in terms of his own fight for quality and all that kind of stuff. So without further ado,
they accused me of being homosexual because of I was discharged for this from the Army. Well, what happened there is back in my youth, you might say my misspent youth, or let's be nice and say my checkered past, I was a libertarian. I was not a conservative, I was a libertarian. And a cook in the mess hall of the 45th Company at the United States Army Airborne School, which is where I was running the lateral drift trainer, was discharged dishonorably for being gay. Now, dishonorable discharge is worse than a federal felony conviction. Pretty much nothing worse to you can happen in America than getting a dishonorable discharge from the military. It was it's really reserved for cowardice in battle, okay? So I led a protest against that, and the officer corps didn't like it and took it out on me, and that's what happened to me in the Army. So I think if you hear these people saying that I'm some kind of anti-gay or anti-trans ideologue, my answer to them has been, have you ever been in jail for gay rights? Have you ever stood up and had a career, like my military career, threatened for standing up for the rights of somebody, when I don't even believe in gay marriage and never have? But I do believe in human rights of people and that the government should treat people well. So I don't hide any of this. I put all this out there. I want everybody to know, what that's about. And Miss Georgilis knew all about this. We had long discussions about these things. Her mother was a prominent gay rights activist herself, and we had discussions about this too. So this was no surprise. This was all presented to the court, but the judge still found I misled her despite all the facts I'm telling you right now. So I think
So this guy's, seriously, to be kicked out of the military under dishonorable discharge.
He was kicked out on...
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a big damn deal, man. Like for this guy to protest, and you don't protest while you're in the military. The only thing that I've ever heard really people protest in the military is being a conscientious objector. Like that's it, man. If you want to be,
and they're protesting being pulled into the military.
No, no. So once you're in, if there's unjust war that you do not agree with,
were there people who went in and then after being in became conscientious objectors?
Yeah, of course. Okay. Yeah. Which hey, in this day and age, like I don't know, maybe the later part of the 1990s, right? We're not really the quote unquote world's policemen just yet. We haven't spread our empire.
Pretty sure those bombs dropped, and I'm pretty sure that was like our call to everybody to be like, hey, guess what? We get to decide everything everybody does. If not, we'll kill hundreds of thousands of you.
Yeah, and so
I disagree, but I get your point.
Yeah, like late 1990s, we weren't everywhere. Right, like we weren't
as much as we are today. The standards, I think, at the time, people would think we're everywhere. It's just,
right.
They didn't. It's just like the debt. We didn't know we could
get
this far.
We were in Kosovo and a couple other places like Somalia and Mogadishu.
It can get worse.
Yeah, and so it's worse. And so at any rate, what I'm saying is if you're in and you don't feel like, hey, now that we're going to war with Iraq, who has nothing to do with 9/11, nothing to do with Al-Qaeda, nothing to do... Like, if you're going to be sent there and you realize that this is an unjust, unconstitutional, undeclared war that you're about to be sent to and you want to be a conscientious objector, by all means, be a conscientious objector.
Did that happen?
It happened. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen here and there, right? Because most people are, you're young, you're stupid. You're like, yeah, let's go kill all those people, those poor people in those countries, right? Because they're the bad guys. Now, for this guy to stand up and protest the fact that one of his buddies down here at Fort Benning in Georgia is getting kicked out for being gay, boy, you want to talk about a set of brass. I mean, that's in Georgia on Fort Benning. Like, this is not the metro area. This is, right on the border of Alabama.
And this is when, too?
Near Phoenix City.
Is not
recent. I'm looking at the guy. I got to imagine it's probably in the 90s somewhere. Late 80s, 90s.
Yeah, it was a different world back then.
Different, a little bit different. And so for this guy to protest that down there, for God's sakes, I mean, he's obviously not a homophobe. The fact that he is identified as a libertarian in his checkered past.
So, to play some sort of devil's advocate,
sure.
I guess, I think a lot of people would disagree and, like, hearing the facts and not disagreeing on the facts we just stated, would still disagree and say he's a homophobe. And they would say, well, he said he didn't believe in gay marriage, so that makes him a homophobe.
Yeah, and I don't think that makes him a homophobe. I think that makes him, one of those people. I think he identifies as a Christian, and obviously Christian faith is sitting there going, hey, listen, we define marriage as man and woman, right? The problem is Christians have allowed the state into marriage. And when that happened, guess what? The state should, if it's doing something, it should be applied equally. I mean, that's my opinion. But at the same time, he's not of that mind, right? He's not of the mind that, hey, listen, this is this, and I believe, and he's wrong. I agree with you, devil's advocate. He's wrong in terms of marriage is between a man and a woman. Sure,
I really don't care. I know a lot of people would disagree on that, so I wanted to make that.
Yeah. And I'm just,
and actually, that's I don't know if that's an interesting conversation, but it's like, what is a homophobe exactly? I've never understood the phobe thing because it's the fear,
the discrimination. You're not really scared of them.
But what most people say is like you hate.
People don't hate. Yeah.
Does he hate gay people? I don't think you could hate. You would hate a gay person if you're willing to sacrifice so much to defend a gay person. So yeah, I don't make
tough,
the argument.
Right?
So can somebody who doesn't believe in gay marriage not be a homophobe? I think so.
Somebody who doesn't believe in gay marriage, can they be a homophobe?
Can not be a homophobe. Can you be somebody who's not a homophobe and also not believe in gay marriage? I think so.
Yeah, all right.
I'm doing the double negatives. I didn't know any other.
Yeah, I'm really I'm trying to I'm trying to unwind that. But anyway, so this is all going on. Banks, I have such an issue with all of this. Just from the very get-go, the fact that this is going on in Texas of all places, and I don't know, if you can Google this, maybe let's see, the 255th district of Texas, Which part of Texas is that? Is that one of those places in Texas that is?
It's not like a congressional district. You're talking about like a judicial district, right?
Well, it doesn't say. It just says the 255th district, Dallas County. Oh, so it's Dallas. So this is Dallas.
Okay.
That's kind of. I mean, would you ever thought Dallas, Texas, has a case before it with a mom and a dad, where one is pushing towards, gender suppression, transgender.
I mean, Beto O'Rourke almost beat Ted Cruz. I'm not saying that everybody on the left and everybody on the right have a split opinion on this or one way or the other, but I think the big cities in the whole country are much more progressive. And I think because they're so, I don't know, this is conjecture, but they're so close to the West Coast, so closer to California, which is much more progressive, it would tend to be more influence there. A lot of people in California move to Texas. So much so that there's some people who have paid for billboards that say, go back to California, liberals, or some funny stuff like that.
Their states collapse.
Which I wouldn't condone, because I think it's kind of stupid to hate other individuals instead of hating the government, but it's funny.
I just find it really odd that most of those states that are collapsing, where people are fleeing to, are the states that are not like that are doing extremely well economically.
Within the framework of our very low standards,
yeah.
I have to say that because it's like, okay, if the whole United States was
a qualifier,
if the whole United States was like Texas, not only would we still not be anywhere close to liberty, but we'd have some problems that, like, okay, as bad as liberal states are, taxes and more government, they tend to not have the death penalty. So it's like, okay, which problem do I want to trade, one or the other?
Yeah.
So if the whole United States was like Texas, well, there'd be a lot of good things about that. Still, standards very low because there's still taxes. They're just not the income taxes, property taxes, and whatever other stuff I can't even think about.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, there's less, I don't know, LGBT rights, but now we have we have the death penalty that we have to fight. Wonderful.
Okay. So my questions, Banks, are we
getting into the controversial side of things?
Let's get into the meat and potatoes of what this is. The outrage. Do you have outrage in you about what this is? I'm not talking about the courts. I am talking about the situation in general.
I do. My biggest outrage, and I am highly biased because, and I don't mean to make this such a big deal, because of like my parents' divorce, which was pretty messy, and I'll go away from the courts here in a second, but the way that family courts operate, there's this premise of it's done for what the child's best interest, and it kind of tears apart the legal framework of parties have a right to petition facts and face their accusers and kind of the due process. It breaks out the due process under this not necessarily bad, but it's like, oh, it's for the children, it's for the child's best interest, and it can be used to justify anything. And here, apparently, to justify what I think is the basic logical thing of, well, until parents have done something really extremely bad, meaning they're probably in prison, like both parents have say over their children until they're 18, and that's how it works. And then but it's violated all the time, and it causes horrendous things. So that's my first outrage. I also, like, the most sane thing to think is that, I guess there's a natural process, right? You go through puberty. And I have no problem with anybody doing whatever they want, right? If they want to call themselves, if there's people want to call themselves pandas, it does not bother me. Like, I don't understand it. There's lots of things I don't understand. That's not the only thing. I don't understand why people, I don't know, like, I can't think of something I don't like, but lots of things. But so what do we know? We know that sometimes there are people who have transitioned and then have regretted it, right? And have wanted to transition back and they can't. They're a small minority. We're talking about small minorities in general here. This is not the large large collection of population. So we don't know certain things. Like we can't prove them, but that we can prove. We can prove there's some people who have transitioned and then have regretted it. We know that if you interrupt puberty, it doesn't happen again. Like I've only had one puberty. I'm pretty sure you have too. I don't know why, even just from a logical standpoint, not even from some religious. I don't even think it matters religion. Like whatever the ideas you have, I don't think it matters from a logical thing. It's like, why would you take that risk? And then there's all these other things you can't prove, but that are very common sense of like, I don't know, you don't know everything when you're a kid. Like the younger you are, the less you know. You're not sure about things. That just seems crazy. If I was married and then got divorced and we had a child, and like it would over my dead body, even if I thought it was the potential outcome later on over my dead body, would that be a deciding factor before 18? Like it doesn't seem smart, and shouldn't we make smart decisions? I don't know. There we go. I've probably said too much, and some people are going to think I'm a horrible person.
Oh, don't worry. You're gonna be real tame compared to what I'm about to say. And
I'm not that worried, but it is like I don't talk about that subject much.
I want first and foremost to put out this disclaimer. Listen, if you're one of those people that's gay and just kind of acts like everybody else, I don't like. Nobody has a problem. Like I don't have a problem with it. I don't think anybody else has a problem with it. I want people to be happy, right? I want kids to be happy. I want adults to be happy, and if who you love, if that's what makes you happy, great. Be with the people that love you and that you love, by all means.
I agree.
In whatever type of way you want to be with them. Now, let's talk about kids in this world, right? A lot of what I see out of the alphabet community, right? And I don't mean that as an offense. Like it's just easier than saying LGBTQ, QRSTV, whatever it is today. And let's not.
It's funny, and all the gay friends I have would find that funny too. Yeah, and anybody who's offended by that is just.
Let's
being
not
stupid.
tiptoe through the tulips like it used. You guys just keep adding letters, and it's weird. Like it's one of those things where you guys are having trouble defining yourselves almost. And for the rest of us that are trying to keep up that are not in those circles, like we're like, okay, what's next? And it seems what's next to me and what's being pushed on us now is pedophilia, right? That's this weird world of trans and pedophilia and things that are not socially acceptable now. Pedophilia is not super socially acceptable.
Well, we talk about things that are not socially acceptable all the time that I think are true. So I'm not defending pedophilia whatsoever. I'm saying that doesn't seem like a good argument.
Transgendering children. Okay? The human brain, as what we know from current medical science, is not fully developed until you're about 24 years old, give or take, right? Give or take.
Mine was developed at like 16.
Let me tell you about my kids, okay? My kids are young. They're like 8 and under, right? My kids live in a world of fantasy. Most children live in a world of fantasy. It is the psychology of the child's brain. They don't understand reality. They don't understand the difference between reality and fantasy. They often, most of the time, pretend to be something. Let me tell you, as a father who is really into, fun and fantasy and sci-fi and fiction and imaginative worlds and just really letting your imagination explore the limitless boundaries that are out there. I love creativity, and I love what it breeds within my own children. And as movies, trends, and things like that come and go, so do the fantasies of my children. I don't care if it's Harry Potter. I don't care if it's Star Wars. I don't care if it's Thor or Iron Man or Spider-Man or Black Widow or anything else that's out there. And that's the thing. In one summer season, I can go from dragons to Star Wars to Marvel, and they think that they're any of those characters. or a dragon itself or a zombie. So if this kid thinks he's a girl, what's the damn difference? It's fantasy. He has no idea of the repercussions of a decision to start to start any kind of therapy in terms of hormones at the age of 7, or let alone 3, when his mom started kind of going down this weird route with him. This is insanity. And it's not the kid who is insane, it is the mother. The fact that you think that your child, who will often fantasize about being a billion different things by the time they're 24 years old, is somehow cognitive enough to make the decision between, what sex they will be when they're an adult, is just ludicrous.
I don't understand how you could possibly, within the list of priorities of decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could possibly, if you're saying that a child has the ability to make the decision, and I'm talking about an age range that's bigger here, about what sex they're going to be, and about permanently modifying their internal body, could be above or below. Hold on. Yeah, below certain other decisions. Like, I'm pretty sure that the parents decide like where the child sleeps, what the child eats, to some degree at least, and make a host of other decisions on a daily basis of when they're going to go to school and when they're going to not play and all this kind of things, or when they're going to go to their room.
Yeah.
All the time. So, I mean, it just, again, I'm trying to approach this from an outward perspective because I really don't think a lot of this can be proven right. It starts from an intrinsically broken situation of divorce and two people who have a joint interest being completely misaligned, right?
And maybe a medical condition on the adult side.
Potentially. Very, 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 very potentially. But if the state is going to be involved and other opinions are going to be involved, I find it most useful to state not everything, but the things that we can kind of hold on to. And pointing at inconsistencies seems like a complicated thing to do, can make things even more explosive, but a way to like come back to sanity. Hey, if you're not going to let your child decide what time they go to bed, why are you letting your child like chemically castrate themselves or stop puberty? Or maybe, and I'll have a conversation with anybody, somebody says, oh, puberty isn't important, and I'll start that conversation. Like, seems important. Seems like a very natural thing that everybody goes through, and to be taken into consideration at the very least, yeah. Right? We do a ton of unnatural things, but I don't know that it just seems insane. Like I am incapable of having that seem like a smart thing to do.
To further,
because even if somebody decides later to transition,
mm-hmm.
right? And that's their identity. Again, no problem. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. Would they have wanted to, if they had started the transition before they went through puberty, would they have wanted to have a doubt? Like, it changes your whole chemistry, your brain too, and so forth.
Yeah.
I know. I think the fact that there are people who have transitioned during or before puberty who now regret it is enough. But even somebody who, let's say, their whole entire life, they're completely confident that they transitioned and they just liked it the whole time, I would think even that person would think it was a better idea to wait until all the things in their body, which are dictating who they are, right?
Yeah.
Would be more settled.
We often talk about the idea of holding the rights of your children in escrow.
Yeah.
Right? Until they're a fully functioning, formed human being.
Which we don't know exactly where that is for the most part.
Right. And so legally,
I'm pretty sure I realize that it's not a 7-year-old.
Legally, let's just say it's 18.
Okay.
Legally, right? So a mother or a father, I don't care which, mother or a father, or a trans individual, and I'm sorry if I am stepping all over things that I really don't know about, okay? In my ignorance. I don't, like, mother, father, trans human being, whatever your pronouns are, which is a weird thing to say anyway, but that's fine. You don't have a right to do this to another human being. When it comes to deciding what you will be as an adult, that is an individual choice. You are holding that right for that child to decide until they are older, at least 18, and then what should happen as a fully functioning, formed adult is that person at that point then has the freedom and liberty to decide for themselves.
And hopefully the understanding that it comes with a proportionate amount of responsibility, which makes your decisions better. Because you can't make good decisions if you only understand one side of
infinitely
the
better
equation.
So that is the point in which this should happen.
Here's why I think that is so easy. Like, I agree with you, but here's why I think it's so easy to agree with you. Because of the nature of the world, and there are certainly people out there who want to control everybody more, including parents, right? Mm-hmm. What you can tell your kids, what you can't tell your kids, and all that kind of stuff. But because of the way reality works, which is a pretty important thing, parents have a ridiculously humongous influence on their kids, good and bad ways. Okay,
depends on the parent.
Yeah, but it's enormous. Okay,
yeah.
Like whether you want to or not, we all have like mommy and daddy issues. Haha, funny. But we do, and this is so far off the plantation of what.
Oh. Go ahead.
Can't use words anymore. God damn it, Shane. Could you note the time, please? This is so far off from where the line would be. So the line is like, okay, is it 16 or 18 or whatever? This is so far off in where reasonable people would say, oh, this is not in the best interest of the child, that I don't think there's much debate there. I will have the debate, but I don't think there's much debate because I can argue about this. Is it good for your parents to let you watch TV? Is it good for your parents to spend 8 hours a day with you or 4 hours a day with you? Like, there are literally millions of things that we could argue, well, is it better for a parent to do this, that, or the other? And I think people could agree like, well, life is just that parents get to decide, and hopefully most parents do good. But this is so far down that if under the premise of, hey, your kid's rights and well-being are held in escrow, of this doesn't seem smart, that I really don't think there's much debate. I'm making a kind of appealing to the majority argument here, but the risk involved seems like a logical thing. It's like there's potentially a lot of risk.
Mm-hmm.
Regretting and putting in danger your identity, because we have proof that some people have, and altering a very natural, not all natural things are good, but a very natural thing that we know changes a person. I'm kind of repeating myself, but it seems so far off. That's why I'm so comfortable saying, like, it seems, and it doesn't seem like it dictates a finality. Like, it doesn't seem like it takes away from all the possibilities later on anyways, right? If you're holding something in escrow, it's almost like you're giving it more attention to its care than you would because you have like this outside objective thing. So if it's basically protection, why wouldn't you take a protection that doesn't hinder the whole range of possibilities afterwards anyways? It's not like you're taking a protection that is going to make things impossible later, like closed doors that can't be opened. Oh, he can never become she, whatever, can never become a man or a woman or identify as later on they can identify as anything they want,
and they can change it. They can change from one day to another. They can change from whoever they're hanging out with.
Well, in my mind, if you are one identity, I would hope for anyone that they would find the identity that their real identity, because that's what kids do. Kids grow up and they find themselves and go with that one and be happy the rest of their lives. That's all.
The case I'm making is they all, but the thing is, they have the liberty and the freedom to have alternate identities, right? Like, as an adult, if you want to be the businessman that goes into an office, looking like $1 million that's a power broker and everything else that gets crap done. And then at night, you want to go hang out in some different circles where you want to throw on a dress and put on some paint and throw some, big, and I say paint, like some makeup and some big eyelashes and a wig. If that's who you want to be at night, you have the ability and the freedom and the liberty to go from one to the other.
Or do anything in between, or whatever it is. Like I don't think it serves the best purpose to illustrate them, because then people don't have enough imagination. When I say the whole range of possibilities, I'm just saying literally not facilitating your child to transition to one thing or another before they're 18 does not stop any of the other possibilities, but transitioning them before they're 18 to something does hinder future possibilities.
It does.
So
here's the other thing.
Again, I don't know how to make the point more clear.
This is the crowd, and I'll stop myself and say this is probably conjecture, right? I'm running parallels here. The same crowd that's okay with this kind of thing is usually the same crowd that's screaming about carbon footprints and pollution and man's impact on the world.
Okay.
And man's impact on the world, and how, it's basically almost a disease, right? And how we are not taking care of the natural world. Now, juxtapose that with this situation right here. They don't even have the patience or the wherewithal to draw the parallel and sit there and say, what we should probably do is just let these kids develop naturally without the introduction of chemical castration or chemicals that alter what their hormones are going to look like, whether it's estrogen plus or testosterone plus or whatever the hell it is. These people are so damn dense and narcissistic. And that's what I want to hit on next, is this mom. She's been obviously enrolling him, her, whatever, the boy. She's been enrolling him in public school as a girl named Luna. Do you think the boy chose that name?
I would imagine not.
I don't know. I bet she probably chose the name.
Well, that's why I said I imagine not.
She
I can't prove
probably
it,
said,
but...
"Would you like me to call you Luna?" He probably was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." Or if that's,
I don't like the guessing game too much.
I don't either. But here's my point: is this is a narcissistic move on her point to make her something more than she is, right? I've got a trans son or a trans daughter, and her name is Luna. For God's sakes, like, is that where you have to be in the progressive world to be cutting edge and cool? Is to not only, give your son a different identity, but to enroll him in a school and then go through this court battle and this mess and this publicity, and then introduce chemicals into their natural bodies to supplant and suppress what they are going to become. That it is unbelievable to me.
I agree, it's unbelievable. I think it is, as much as I understand where you're coming from, it could definitely be a high level of narcissism. I think it could just as much be a high level of
mental instability.
I was going to say poor self-esteem and delusion.
Lack of wholeness. I mean, line up whatever it could be.
Yeah, it could be a plethora of things.
Right. And this is a problem
but those are two things that I look in a different way. A narcissistic person, well, they're narcissistic for a reason, and those can be complicated, but I look at it in a very different way. I can still think that people who have problems are responsible for their actions, but I would look at it a different way than somebody who is a lost, broken, delusional, crazy person.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I just see this, and I'm wondering, in America, the sexualization of kids. You just, God Almighty, you remember what it was like to be a kid, man? I mean,
I was a pretty innocent kid.
I was an extremely innocent kid. I mean,
it's definitely changed.
I didn't really start thinking about girls until I was in middle school. I mean, they were cute and they were fun.
Well, you can think about, but there's a difference between thinking about girls
and wanting to mate with girls.
Well, that and just like
or boys or whatever.
Girls
the
wanting
case
to
is.
become women so early.
Sure.
And so forth.
Right. And the thing is even in middle school, right? Like, and this may make some people uncomfortable out there. And maybe warning if you got young kids listening to this. You know, I'm not gonna. You know, I'm gonna try to stay. If I.
You don't have to say everything you think.
Neil Bortz used to be a guy down here in Atlanta. It's kind of claimed to be a libertarian a little bit.
Is he dead now?
No, he just doesn't live here. He lives down in Naples now, and he's retired from the whole thing here. But you know, when we talk about this kind of thing, he had an extremely salient point, and it was obviously pro understanding of the LGBTQ alphabet community, right?
Okay.
It was, there's people that absolutely thought that, being gay was nothing but a choice, right? And he was like, okay, well, when did you make the choice to be straight? And it would always leave the people baffled, who were arguing the other point. That
yeah, because they'd probably just say something
right?
like, I just am.
It's a major life decision. If what you're saying is true, it's such a major life decision. What day, time, can you name the place when you decided to be gay or be straight? And the answer was always no. Most of the time, and I'm not saying it's 100%. What I'm saying is most of the time, you just kind of gravitate towards what naturally occurs, right?
In not just sexuality, in most things.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, naturally. And so my point in all of this is, obviously as you mature, your relationships also mature with not only the opposite sex, but with the same sex. And I don't know, for me, man, when I was 7, man, I was just concerned about what was in my lunch. What did mom pack for lunch today? Or, what am I going to do? Or can I sit next to my buddies? Or, are we doing PE today? Or are we going to music? Or are we going to art for, what?
Yeah.
It was such a simple life. Is Transformers on? Is He-Man on? What's on this afternoon? I didn't.
But
boy,
that being said, as much as children can definitely fantasize, they're not completely in touch with reality, and they would tend to think about other things. They are still they have brains and they can see the outer world and so forth. And the outer world has changed a lot. So I could see how some things could seep into very young children.
Well, and I don't disagree with that. And I don't know,
because I only make logical points.
No, and then it kind of brings up the point, and I didn't want to talk about this at all, but you look at the sexualization part, right, where now you've got drag queens coming into libraries and do reading time, right? Hey, if you don't want to be there, don't be there, right? I understand that side of it, but I also
that side of it would be just very easily fixed by just don't have public libraries and schools, and then you wouldn't have that problem in the first place.
Yeah, right.
Who you think is a good influence on your kids or on your environment is totally up to you. And people who even like each other disagree completely. I had the mother of a friend who wouldn't let me come around because I was a bad influence. Apparently, I was not a bad influence.
You weren't going to school and things like that.
No, this is when I was much younger. Finally, my mom and her became friends, and then that fixed up. But for a while, I was not allowed to come over, and he wasn't allowed to come over to my place. So I kind of destroy your train of thought there. But I don't know. All these things seem to have such a simple way for us all to get along. And I really don't understand why we can't all get along.
All right, Rodney King.
It really baffles me sometimes.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to get along very well with people who want to introduce chemicals into children to change.
So here's a question.
Sure.
If it's there, I interrupted you again. But
go ahead.
If the two parents agree, what do you think should be the case? Legally and just in general.
I still think those kids have rights in escrow, right? That's their rights. They're waiting for them at 18. They haven't gotten there yet. We're not there.
So you think that would be a violation of a kid?
Listen, man, this is a violation of the Hippocratic Oath. And I imagine most doctors don't even take, and I've been told this by physicians now, that most doctors don't even take the Hippocratic Oath. For those of you that might be a little younger and don't know what the Hippocratic Oath is, it's basically doctors take an oath saying, I will do no harm, right? Is this procedure, are these chemicals needed for the natural progression of life? The answer is unequivocally, absolutely, positively no.
Well, I would think that the needed is not the right question.
Is the kid going to die?
Well, you do. There are tons of medical procedures that are done that have no bearing on life or death. But this is like, is this a smart thing to do? And the possibilities, does this...
Are you introducing harm? You are. As a doctor, you're introducing harm.
Yeah, I agree.
You're introducing something completely unnatural to a healthy body most of the time.
So are fake breasts.
Yeah, but this is a kid, and you can't get fake breasts as a kid.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing is the Hippocratic Oath is a big thing. So in this day and age, legislatures and everybody else will allow people in the medical damn industry to go out there and chemically castrate and introduce chemicals into kids. But we're going to ban jewels. We're going to ban flavored jewels. We're going to ban you from plants like cannabis. But this is cool.
Yeah, it's weird.
What the fuck are we doing, America? Why is this even close to being acceptable? This is not weird. This is one of the most messed up things when you juxtapose what the reality is of the, quote unquote the law. This is beyond the pale, man. This the medical community. I mean, this brings up larger questions for me. Like, and this is part of what I wanted to talk about. You know, this idea that the medical community is there to help people. The pharmaceutical community, companies are there to help people. It's not true.
Well, it's not necessarily true.
Well,
it's true in many cases.
But the problem is I don't see it. It's the same thing that when I put
you don't see doctors helping people.
No, what I don't see is doctors outing doctors. It's the same way as I don't see cops outing cops. When I post stuff about cops that are abusing people outside of their oath and outside of the law, I should say,
we need to spend more time with doctors because my sister, and brother-in-law, like, they out other doctors all the time. That's all they do.
I don't see it. Not here in America.
Wait. Well, you can't see everything all the time. I'm sure it happens.
I don't see it even in the communities where we travel. Right? We kind of are a counterculture, community. We do not live in mainstream. If we are paying attention to mainstream, it's to poke holes and really think about what they're saying so that we can turn it on their head, apply principle, and just absolutely sink their ship.
We had a doctor on our show. I forget his name, unfortunately, which sounds bad. I hope he's not listening. Who totally called out the medical system. So yeah, some of it. Right, but there's very few. What you don't see, but that's a general state of things. There wouldn't be things to call out if people didn't tend to group into big groups, because the big groups that need to be called out wouldn't exist in the first place. Yeah, but that's just a natural tendency.
What I'm saying is, I think what can be perverted for the almighty dollar in this world has absolutely been perverted, man. And that's the thing. Medicine has been perverted. The pharmaceutical company, pharmaceutical market has been perverted. In this case,
the cell phone market has been perverted. Tons of people like Apple, and it's going to take time. Not a lot of people are calling them out, but I think that's more just how societies evolve and so forth. Groups, and it takes time for big groups to form. And it takes time and have consensus, and it takes time for that consensus, which built up something. Just like if you amassed an amount of money, it would take time to spend it.
Well,
kind of thing.
I'll give you a case in point. Veterans for Ron Paul, right?
Okay.
We're very aware of Veterans for Ron Paul. We're very aware of Veterans for Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why are we aware of these people?
Because they're the largest group because they donated more to Ron Paul than any other candidate.
Because they're loud. They're loud and they're boisterous and they're give a fucks are at zero. That's the difference. Is I don't see that out of groups of doctors going out and calling out doctors for practices like chemical castration of kids. I don't see it for, cops going out and outing and demanding more and more and more justice in terms of getting rid of bad cops. Like, I don't see that kind of thing. And so I'm just saying, juxtapose that is, I see some veterans going out there and going, this is.
Yeah, but you can't see everything. I don't know.
I'm not saying I do.
I don't get your exact point. Like, I don't even want to disagree with you. But I think you're focusing on something that different people with different interests and different things that they focus on could see across every spectrum.
Yeah,
like,
we should.
There's some people who haven't noticed the Veterans for Ron Paul. There's some people who are interested in foreign policy and promoting peace who haven't noticed them at all and would say nobody in the military calls out anything, and I might say, well, there's some of them doing like that. That's nothing. Military just continues and kills people and illegal wars and drones and so I just don't get your point. So I'm disagreeing with you because without knowing what point I'm disagreeing with, but I think it's not the most healthy thing to get stuck in something because our mind can only focus on certain area of the prism. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. What are we talking about now? This is weird.
So that's where I get to is I have not seen it. I tried to do the whole Google search doctors against like chemical castration, and you don't find it. Like you don't find like I can find doctors against vaccines and things like that, mm-hmm. which I think is kind of cool. But
it's also a subset. I mean, there are not that many people. I don't know what the number is who are going through transition. It might be more.
Which seems
like the other side is loud too.
Which seems
they're
like
actually a smaller portion of the population.
That's what I'm saying is, which seems like it should be the razor's edge of like as loud as you see things like this for kids to be in drag, for kids to be chemically changed and altered for their sexuality before even going through puberty, like that. They're loud. They're real damn loud. So
sure.
What you don't see is on doctors going, no, this is really stupid. What are you thinking?
Well, it's not always proportionate.
It's definitely not proportionate, but I don't see it. And the thing is the fraction of people who are on this side where they're chemically castrating kids, it's minute. It's tiny. It's so small. And the fact that we have all these doctors out here that I don't see a response to it. I don't know. For the life of me, I don't know how this goes through a court system. And somehow, before this week where she got sole custody of the kids to do something like this, like it absolutely boggles my mind. These are not experts. The people in the court are not experts. They have no idea. They have no idea about the ramifications of this. And the jury is sitting there going, yeah, give her full custody, at least the first time through. Until the judge says, no, hey, you know what? This guy's actually going to get at least partial custody of his kids, where at least he has to be involved somehow in the medical decisions for them.
Yeah.
What'd you find over there?
I don't disagree with you just for the pleasure of disagreeing with you.
Yes, you do.
But this is also for the pleasure of giving you some hope, even though I don't think that everybody who fights for virtuous things does it in the right, loving way. I say that as a general remark. Top pediatrician, transgender ideology is child abuse. Chemical castration and the surgical mutilation of children is not therapy. Dr. Michelle Cretella, president of the American College of Pediatricians.
Yeah, but I mean, is she part of a larger group? Does it say there, by any chance?
Of a larger group? I mean, she's the president of the American College of Pediatricians.
Yeah, but there is the College of Pediatricians coming out is what I'm asking.
I don't know from this article. It's a long article, but
anyway, that's the thing is.
I just want to make statements based off of things that you can tangibly prove.
You can. I'm going to sit here and make conjecture.
Stop it right now.
No, you're not. And that's the problem is I'm going to sit here and at least throw these things out there because I think it's worth thinking about. I think it's worth doctors and cops and vets and everybody else out there standing against these systems where the almighty dollar is driving it and nobody is saying anything about it. Like this that is brought to the forefront. You know, I would love to hear a bunch of doctors weigh in and say, what you guys are doing is absolutely abuse of a child.
Yeah, I think it would probably be smarter to say it in a little different way if you want kumbaya peace at the end.
That's political. I don't want peace. I want kids escrowed rights to be recognized.
No, I want peace.
Well, yeah, but I want those kids. If it means that these kids are saved from crazy parents,
being more confrontational is not going to save the kids faster necessarily.
I'm not saying it's going to save them faster. I'm saying
at
some point, if you know it comes down to this kid's in imminent danger, then I want that kid saved.
I'm talking.
I don't want them saved by the state. Don't get me wrong.
I'm talking the emotional appeals thing. But even if you're just looking at it strategically, if you're trying to convince a body of people who have an emotional attachment, especially to one side or the other in many subjects, you probably don't want to say that they're abusing their kids, even if I might agree. You probably want to make arguments that are easier.
What if the kid shows up with a black eye? What are you going to say?
Yes, but
no. I'm serious.
Okay, let me answer the question. This is maybe most comfort.
Well, let's see. I want to hear it because this pisses me off.
You're not. The whole problem you're having here is that you're dealing with two sides that believe completely opposite things, and there's not a consensus. There is a pretty good consensus, not perfect, but a pretty damn good consensus that you're not supposed to give your child a black eye. Okay, so my whole premise is seeing it from where apparently there is not a consensus. So what is the best way most loving way to build a consensus around the truth?
The consensus is
the consensus around the truth of that parent is a piece of shit because they hit their child and gave them the black eye is already attained.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is hitting a kid is against the law. You can't hit a kid.
True.
Right? If you hit a kid and somebody sees
the fact that it's a law is a product of the fact that it's such an easy consensus to gain.
It is. Now, introducing chemicals, like anybody who sees a kid with a black eye from an adult is going to say that's abuse. Sure. Period. Now, if you introduce chemicals into a body that is not your body,
which we do all the time.
Yeah.
Just makes the consensus harder to... That's probably one of the things that makes the consensus harder to reach. I'm looking at reality, okay? There are people who think it's perfectly fine.
We're not vaccinating them, though.
And promote it on TV. And there's people who think it's horrible.
I think it's abuse. It is abuse because it is not needed, right? And it is not even... There's nothing scientific even backing it up. That's the problem. Like, for vaccines where we introduce chemicals into kids... There is at least some science backing up part of the vaccines and how they came to be. Trust me, my kids went through the delayed schedule, and there's some consternation here with me and vaccines to begin with. And for somebody to sit there and introduce chemicals into a child's body that are absolutely unwarranted and unneeded and not protecting them against anything, that is abuse. Plain and simple to me.
Okay. I just don't think that's the best way to build consensus.
I don't care. So we'll agree to disagree.
No, we won't agree to disagree.
Sure. I think it is. I think drawing a hard line here and saying this is abuse and it should absolutely be against the law to introduce chemicals into a youth's body for transgendering. I think it's absolutely a crime.
Okay. I don't think it should be done either.
Go ahead.
You're making me quite mad today.
That's good. Go for it.
I don't like being mad.
Go for it.
You took what I was saying for the purpose of building consensus and doing it in the best way, which is where most people are at peace.
So is the best way is that
harmony.
Is that the point of contention? Is the best way?
That's what I said in the first place. I said the way to have that, to make that happen with more peace, is to not call people who have a strong ideological, very fractured from our opinion thing is to do it by not calling them an abuser.
That's
what I said.
What do you say to people that hit their kids then?
I already went over this, dude.
No, that really think that it's not only deserved, but they need it. How is it different to me?
So
I don't understand how it's different to address this.
It is different because I would address somebody who says, I think I should be able to punch my child in the eye and give them black eyes differently than I would address somebody who says, I think spanking is okay. I would not want to spank my kids. I know I have friends who got hit with switches. My mom slapped us as kids. I think slapping's horrible. Okay. Now, I don't want to admit this, but I guess I am, so I do want to. And I don't want the judging my mom to be that harsh, but she would, when we did something bad, slap us, saying, and if we flinched, we'd get another slap. I think that's horrible. Okay.
What if it was just to get your attention?
To get my attention.
Yeah, I mean, not in that context. I'm saying, like,
I don't want to debate that. It's already kind of weird that I exposed that, but I would address that person, and there's a gradient different than I would address somebody who outright said that they should be able to make their kid bleed, because a black eye is an internal bleed, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is,
so there is a gradient, though. I don't even think that spanking is the best thing.
Yeah,
but I would still not condone them in equal ways.
If you're looking at a spectrum, and this is what I'm getting at, is if you're looking at a spectrum of child abuse, spanking, getting their attention, maybe, a slight slap. And I'm not saying with the threat of if you flinch at a slap that you're going to get beat even more severely. I'm just saying this, right? And absolutely hurting a child. And I mean like almost injury, right? Let's just say injury. Mm-hmm. Hurt, injury, right? Injured falls in the same category for me in my thought process.
That's punch in the eye.
Punch in the eye, really injured, broken bones, contusions.
I get your point.
Chemical injection.
No, I think I already made the point in the very beginning that
it's abuse.
That it is, but I didn't even say it wasn't.
You're arguing best case for building consensus.
And the only reason this continues is because I said I was frustrated that you took my argument into a different direction that I had not.
Well, I'm trying to understand here.
No, this is not actually bothering me. This is fine. This happens in discussions. I think, and your point is very well taken. I just think that because of the reality of things, that would probably be better. It's also more of the way this is the way you are. I'm not. I'm up front, and I'm just going to sit there and tell anybody to their face that what you're doing is abuse to kids. And if you don't like it, I don't care. But you should care a little bit.
I don't. I don't care because I care more about that kid and their natural development than I do somebody's damn feelings. And I don't care how it builds consensus. You should never, ever, ever be able to inject a kid with something like hormones at the age of 7 if it's not for life-saving type situations. Like it's absolutely insane to me.
That's problematic because within a more free world where the government had less power, because reality isn't good and because parents can already abuse their children, okay? Like mental abuse is
I agree.
Is horrible. There's not a lot of parents that are stopped from mentally abusing their kids, and it happens.
Yeah, but that's different. We haven't even addressed mental abuse here. We haven't even broached the subject of mental abuse. I'm talking about this is physical, and let's see, like mentally, that's going to have a problem later on as well. One way or another, there are going to be either thoughts or doubts or what ifs created by introducing this factor.
Potentially,
sure,
most likely.
Yeah,
I don't think you can say it categorically.
I mean, 100%.
I enjoyed the conversation. I'm kind of over it. Playing devil's advocate for something you don't necessarily agree with is exhausting.
Yeah, why do it then?
Because I think I think the truth is important. I think if there's a voice of reason, I don't mean to sound arrogant at all, and I'm not saying I'm more reasoned than you.
Yeah, I'm unreasoned here.
That's not what I'm trying to contend, but it's the same reason I do the podcast. I think that often people, and I need this on many other subjects, right? Need to see the truth, and if the truth isn't out there, and it doesn't matter if it's a small nuance, I won't take somebody seriously if I just have this feeling, not all feelings are bad, that I can't trust them. But if they introduce a nuance, that nuance can be just enough for me to trust them. And I think the nuance, like the reason you trust somebody is because you recognize truth. So if somebody's having a hard time following a conversation, even if the majority can follow our conversation very, very easily, and they pretty much know we think it's a horrible, horrible thing, that's physical injury, and that on top of it is not smart. But I think that the whole truth is just as important, because it gets potentially, if I can make the perfect argument, which I'm not the most eloquent person, I'm not like Seneca or Cicero making arguments in the Roman Senate, but if you find the most truth out there, it'll have the best outcome, or at least be able to make people trust you more, because you're being fully inquisitive and objective about all the things you're talking about.
I think for me, that's fine. That's not me. Like I don't care to go down those roads. I don't care to go down the devil's advocate road on this. I do have questions in my mind about, in a liberty society, right? Which we obviously want more than anything, and what we're pushing culture towards, is how does this stack up? Like, in a liberty society, right? It is a complicated one, because let's say you have doctors out there. Let's say you have doctors out there who supply this to a niche market, right? Because in a liberty society,
doctors or just bad people.
Yeah, you're free to do what you want. I don't know if there, a market exists. Maybe, I guess it does in certain places where moms want to be cool or dads want to be cool, and in progressive circles,
or are just misinformed,
or they're mentally challenged, or, like we said, a million different things, right? Where this happens, in a society like that, how does one deal with child abuse? How does one deal with is it a family? Because I know how it used to be. It used to be family. It used to be townspeople. It used to be, people who would step in and either, take somebody away from a situation, or publicly shame, or,
Well, that's going to be a part of that is community is a natural part of life.
Yeah.
I would think that in a liberty society, community would also be a natural part of life, and actually might play the potentially bigger role it's supposed to in the first place. But there are people who argue, for example, like if the husband beats his wife, who's going to protect that wife? And some of the ways it might work, this is all hypothesis, is that there would just be much less protections for the husband, for potential reasons of your reputation and honor would matter more within the framework for employment contracts and to get insurance and so forth. And those would matter so much that if you did something really, really bad, just society would care less about you. So it would be easier for a wife to flee, to flee and go somewhere else, and for the husband to try to make a case, and so forth. And there'd be just nobody to prop him up, but because he would have fallen down all the things that society would have built: credit scores, insurance, reputation, whatever the society would have built for us to be able to interact with each other, which we kind of already have. The government has constructed a lot of it, but in a more free world, the free market would do it more. That it would still exist though. So a lot of it would potentially be, maybe it would be easier for kids to get away from that. It would be easier for outside people to get involved without having negative ramifications, because whatever credit score companies or social score companies, that sounds bad, but there would be some things like that for insurance purposes and so forth. We would be like, oh, you can, we're not, we don't care about that. This other guy looks like he's a piece of crap and so forth.
Yeah, no, I guess
it's a complicated
what I've got in my mind, is, as an adult, let's in a freer society, right? Let's just say a husband injects his wife with a cocktail of things that she can't possibly understand, right? She can't comprehend what it could possibly do to her, right? Is that, are you in violation at that point? Are you in violation of NAP?
Well, it's even easier is if you've given consent. So if you're not capable of giving consent, then it's a violation, right?
Okay.
That's why you're not allowed, there's a law about that's why, that's the thing. That's why has been argued the age of consent it's called the age of consent because they can give consent.
Right.
And before they're able to give consent to have sex, then they're not allowed to have sex because their brain is incapable of giving that consent. And I would argue, the 7-year-old can't give consent to this. So
yeah,
and it's weird that on the same spectrum,
that's where I get.
I did what annoyed me about you. I'm saying the spectrum here because I think we play into party politics, but within a lot of people who would argue for like the Me Too movement and all this kind of stuff, that there's also this where they're obviously a 7-year-old can't give consent. Like if you can't, and that's the same order of priority. If you can't give consent to sex, how can you give consent to your body being permanently altered?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like tattooing a kid, right? Only way worse.
Yeah.
Way worse.
Agreed.
Okay. We're on the same page.
We were already on the same page.
I love you, buddy.
On most things. Hold on. If anybody was worried that we were in like a horrible argument, like we were not.
We do this all the time. No, and I think you have to have conversations like this. I think it's useful for our audience. I think you got to have these. You've got to have tough conversations, and you've got to be able to look at the guy across the table or girl or whoever, trans, whatever it is. Hey, man, I love you. And I want good things for you, and I want good things for people in this community, and I want you to be able to have these conversations without being a pariah or being, disregarded to the dustbins of history for talking about things and brainstorming and having these intellectual conversations as to how a better society and more free society works. I think these are the fantastic types of conversations I love having. That's why I wanted to do the podcast in the first place. It's because we would have these amazing conversations, and at the end of it, you just be like, "Yeah, man, right on. Love you too. Can't wait to have these conversations again. I'm wore out. Let's get some Taco Bell, and then let's hit it again tomorrow."
Yeah, I enjoy these conversations with you certainly, but because we do agree on a lot and in general. And good Lord, you don't agree that we agree in general?
Now I'm being the obtuse one.
That's a loophole of epic proportion. That's some inside baseball there. But are you pulling up the definition?
I am. I'm gonna.
Good Lord,
throw it up here for everybody.
I hope
to
people
see.
are amused by this.
Yeah,
because I'm almost not.
I'm gonna. Let's see. Annoyingly insensitive or slow to understand. I think that's the definition. Kind of.
Can you click on like translations or more definitions?
Yeah, that's where I was going next.
Not
difficult to understand. There is. Let's try synonyms of the word.
Tundre, beat against.
Where's my synonyms at down here?
It comes from the Latin beat against. Is that like you have to beat against his brain and the guy still doesn't understand because he's slow?
Well, yes, and there are people who will insensitive, antonyms. Stupid, difficult to comprehend, not clear. Synonyms and antonyms. Here we go. Choose the right synonym. Obtuse versus abstruse.
What? This is
blunt, dull.
Merriam-Webster website is
mean,
sucks.
Not sharp, keen, acute, dull. Yeah, if you ever thought I was calling you these things,
I didn't think so. I just don't like the word.
No, as I had learned the word obtuse, it was disagreeable, basically to be disagreeable. It wasn't one of those things to ever call somebody a dullard or a moron or stupid or anything like that.
I never thought you used it in the worst of
ways.
But even being said, oh, you're being disagreeable to be disagreeable, like I'd be annoyed by that. But I would just argue that instead of being like, hey, that word just, I don't like it. But I saw it being a synonym on whatever website of it's like stupid, basically. But it would be stupid to disagree just to be disagreeable.
See, and that's why I don't do devil's advocate very often. Anyway,
is anybody still listening?
130 Banksy already. One subject, man. We are
had-
long-winded, buddy.
What's good is we have all these other things prepped that we never get to.
I know.
I've got 2 of them now. I've got one on Ben Shapiro, which would have been good in this episode because it's about gender and sex and so forth. Next time.
Next time. What time is it?
It is
5
time
p.m.
for people to leave reviews if they have
is.
enjoyed our ranting and information giving. You can go on the podcast app, the Apple Podcast app, on iTunes, which is actually now called the podcast app on your iOS too.
That's what it looks like.
And leave us a review. You can also do it on Stitcher, on Podbean. We don't look at those as much, but
If you do it there, bring it to our attention.
or on Facebook, where we have I think like 30ish now. So that's pretty cool.
It's actually pretty good.
If you want us to talk about something and you're like, man, they just spent the whole freaking hour and a half talking about that one subject and couldn't even agree,
Beat the damn dead horse.
send us an email, tag us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and say, hey, I need you guys to talk about this and stop talking about other stuff. If you want to send us an email, it's info@rebellionpod.com.
And lastly, if you've enjoyed this so much that you want to throw us $1 million, sponsorship, whatever it is, you can go to patreon.com/rebellionpod. There you can become a patron of the show. We definitely need it. We're trying to expand, get into as many facets of culture as possible, take over the world, and leave everybody alone. That's kind of what we're doing here, and so we'd really appreciate that. I think we're doing pretty well with that right now. But to our patrons,
We can always do more.
stickers are coming. We can't thank you guys enough for helping us get this show out to cover at least the cost of everything. And I think big things are coming, guys. What is this, episode 136 now?
Yep.
Man, I'll tell you what. I keep looking at these as I do post production. I'm like, wow, unbelievable. But
I remember when I would have like these dead moments where I didn't know what to say and then I had to get used to the silly camera over there. And yeah, I feel very comfortable
yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
sharing way too much about myself. I mean, another 136 episodes, you guys are going to know everything about myself, apparently, because I just keep like falling out by
But
accident.
that's good. That,
I'm not saying that's a bad
and
thing.
that endears people, because I think there's a lot of people who've gone through very similar struggles in life. And, when you can empathize and share a common ground, I think some amazing things happen.
Oh, no,
with people.
I definitely get it. I just never planned.
Yeah.
Like the normal person, in the same way that I make that analogy, and I'm going to end soon, I promise, that if you got in a normal day and 100 people tell you're awesome, like you're freaking awesome, but within the context of elections, that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah.
In that same way, it is not normal for people to share so much, even with a small subset of people. So with a lot of people, it's even less normal.
What's funny is where you see people who share a ton, right? Where you know a ton about them. You see pictures, especially now with the advent of social media and everything. It's amazing, how many people live very similar lives, very similar thoughts, and are, I don't say fans, but definitely clued in, and part of it at a deeper level, because they can relate. And I think that has great potential. That's why you create content. But thank you guys all for sharing your lives with us. Thank you for hearing us. Thank you for entertaining us in our ideas and thoughts and arguments and everything else. Like we always say, we love you. We need you.
Peace.
Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff.